Welcome back to the Perfect Game College Baseball Weekend Recap. This is the JUCO edition. As always, I'm Brian Sikowski. I'm joined by Colton Olinger, my JUCO partner in crime here at Perfect Game. It's World Series time. We're here. We did it. We have our bids. Everything's settled. We don't know the brackets yet in D1 or D2, at least as far as we could find on Sunday night. I don't think those have been released yet. But either way, we know who's going to be in Grand Junction. We know who's going to be in Enid. And that is what this show is going to be about, more or less, today. We're just going to take us through these World Series, touch on some storylines, and Colt and I are each going to make our picks for the D1 and the D2 World Series. So, without further ado, the Division I NJCAA World Series bids: Walter State, Florence, Darlington, Sanjak, Indian Hills, Cowley, Shelton State, Miami-Dade, Crowder, McLennan, and Central Arizona. Some interesting ones, some favorites certainly in there, some upsets as well. Colt, what are a couple storylines of those bids that stood out to you?
Yeah, right off the top, Shelton State stands out kind of, we had some other clubs in Alabama kind of ranked ahead of them throughout the season. But it's an offense that got hot there once they got to the Region 22 tournament. And they got knocked into the losers bracket, got their way back into the championship game, and the offense carried them from there, putting up ridiculous numbers. I want to say they scored 22 runs in the deciding game of the championship game to put out Dothan and punch their ticket to Junction. So definitely interesting there. They've kind of had a little bit of time off, so we'll see what the bats are like when they get to Junction coming up here next week. But definitely a team to keep an eye on there. And another interesting story is Indian Hills. They kind of went through a gauntlet, had to get through Iowa Western, a club that we both really liked, as well as Wabash Valley to get their ticket punched there to Grand Junction. And, Coach Torres is stepped into a really good program there at Indian Hills after he left Trinidad State there in Region 9 and has continued his winning ways that he had at Trinidad and the winning ways they had at Indian Hills. So dangerous club there for Indian Hills as they get ready to take on Grand Junction.
No doubt about that Indian Hills club. That's quite the gauntlet they ran through there, and definitely an impressive bid win for them. I of course, like the Central Arizona storyline. They're the defending champs. They won in 2019. We're all aware of that. We were high on them preseason. They were number one for quite a bit of time this season before sort of falling towards the back half of the top 10. But, they had to run the gauntlet. Like, they got beat by Yavapai in the state tournament, still obviously made it through to the regional, but had to go through Southern Nevada, had to go through Yavapai, won their way there, like the experience of that club, like the depth and the veteran leadership there. Miami-Dade out of Florida, of course, is a great one as well. That's the first time that a school from Florida – the bid from Florida was non-panhandle in several years. I think 5 or 6 years, even dating back into the mid-2010s. But either way, Miami-Dade winning their way to Grand Junction for the first time in a while. They had to go through Northwest Florida. They had to go through Santa Fe, probably schools that were a little bit more favored than they were. But either way, great storyline there. Looking forward to seeing what they can do in Grand Junction. And now we're going to make our picks for D1. Colt, I'm going to put you on the spot. Who you got?
It's you kind of look back over the years and there's a lot of offense when you get to Grand Junction. You get up there, up in the Rockies, a little bit of altitude and, a lot of great pitching this year, but I'm going to stick with the offense. I'm going to go with Walter State, a club that's really swung it well all year. It's a dangerous lineup. They got the long ball. They've got the average. They're going to find the barrel. So I'll ride with Walter State.
And obviously I touched on Central Arizona's depth and leadership and just the veteran nature. And they have some guys who won it with them 2 years ago, which is unique in JUCO. I'm taking Central Arizona. I'm picking a repeat. My first couple years of doing junior college baseball, I accurately picked Chipola to win 2 of their NJCAA World Series. So I'm going to stick with that theme. Think maybe I'll get lucky and I'll take Central Arizona. Moving on to Division II, the bids have also been clinched in D2. They are Lincoln Land, Lackawanna, Kellogg, LSU-Eunice, Frederick, Madison, Kirkwood, Western Oklahoma State, Patrick Henry, and Phoenix. Colt, same deal, man. What are some of your favorite storylines out of D2?
Yeah, I love the LSU-Eunice club there. It's a club that was rolling in 2020 before COVID shut them down. And none the different this year in 2021, 46-6. as they finish up winning that Gulf region and taking care of Region 23 to punch their ticket. And then you look out west and you got Phoenix, a club that, the record's 25-21. But don't let it fool you. They're going to play. They play a lot of the Division I schools there in Arizona. They're playing against South Mountain. They're playing against Central Arizona, Yavapai, and Cochise. Those types of schools. They're well battle tested, and they're going to be no joke when they get there. Club to really keep an eye on.
No doubt about that. And obviously I have to stay true to my roots here as a Michigan native. And I got to talk about Kellogg knocking off Lansing. We have to talk about that. We spent most of the spring pushing Lansing up the JUCO rankings because they kept winning. They were like 46-1 at one point, late in the season. And Kellogg just beat them. They took 2 out of 3. They beat them at Lansing's home field. They came back in a big way in the series deciding third game. And congrats to Kellogg going to Enid. That's fantastic. Had to talk about the Bears. In addition to that, I have to talk about Kirkwood too. That's one of my personal kind of favorite programs. And obviously with Perfect Game being based in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, there's a connection there as well. But Kirkwood didn't start off great. They really didn't. We had them in the top 50 preseason, and then just, the first few weeks of looking at it, they weren't in consideration anymore. They had a tough few weeks, but they really developed offensively. There's a lot of power in that lineup, and they kind of slugged their way along with some veteran pitching and some big contributions from some of the young guys. They're on their way to Enid, and congrats to the Eagles for sure. To wrap it up, Colt, who's your D2 pick?
Got to ride with LSU-Eunice. Like I mentioned earlier, hungry club. A lot of guys returning from that 2020 roster that were off to a hot start and thought that this is where they were headed. So I think they're on the right path there. And
I'm not going to even try and steal the spotlight here. I'm picking Eunice as well. I think that's a really complete ball club. I think that they maybe already had to face one of their hardest tests to even get to Enid and getting by Pearl River. Going with Eunice along with Colt. With that, we are out for this week. We'll talk to you next week when we give you updates on what will be the ongoing World Series. See you next week.